Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. You are listening to the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and today we have a guest that has been on the show before, Cassandra Bodzak, and today we are talking about divinely designing your life. And so what does that really mean? I mean, we talked about so many different things, but one of the things that you may or may never have thought of is, what does your life look like in the next 5 years? Even what does it look like in 1 year? And how can you design it in a way that you can reach that goal or desire? What can you start doing now to get to that place where you really want to be? And so this is something that I think about very often. And you sort of reverse engineer what it is that you want. Okay, so in 5 years, I want to be, living in Puerto Rico. Or maybe you think, okay, in 5 years, I'd love to have, a family, or in 2 years, I'd like to be married, or whatever it is. So Cassandra today is sort of, what she says, and I'll quote her, doing the practical and adding the magical. So this is going to be a really fun, interesting topic. And actually, in a couple of weeks, before the end of the year, I am going to have a podcast all about this and kind of planning for the year ahead and looking back. So, which is something that I do. It's kind of a tool or a ritual that I do every end of the year in December. How I wrap up the year. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit differently than what Cassandra is talking about, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So I hope you're all well, and listen in if you are looking. I know it's been a hard year for so many people globally, and this may just kind of help plant the seed of what your life will be in the next year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. And then I'm going to be talking about that as well. So on to the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and this week we have a returning guest, Cassandra Bodzak. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's so nice to hear your voice. So we are talking today, which I think is such a great topic for what's currently happening now in the world and what we're all experiencing and going through, is how to divinely design your life. And so I was so excited to just for this interview, because I'd love your wisdom through this. So tell us a little bit about sort of, I'm sure that you're sort of designing your own life. So how did this sort of topic come to be in your life? I guess we could start there.
Yeah. Well, I think I've been doing a lot of different coaching and teaching over the years, but for my, like you said, like for my life, what I really realized, that clients and people on the internet have asked me about is kind of, how did you kind of create this life that you have, that is this life that you dreamed of one day, and then now you have it. And that's really been the ongoing process through the different modalities that I've taught, and through, whether I was focusing on loving your body or eating with intention, or if it was more of my practical magic or building a business with Spread Your Light. All of these were really essentially divine lifestyle design, right? And when I really got clear on what is my kind of like formula for this, and I've been doing it pretty, I did it unconsciously for a few years. And then I really started realizing what I was doing and got much, much better with it and refined it the past few years, because I truly believe that the vision that we have for our lives, the desires that we have, the dreams that we have, they're not random. I believe that they're divine seeds that are planted within us that are meant to blossom during this incarnation here.
Mm,
And, if we have a vision, and I think all of us have a vision, some of us like to stuff it down or kind of push it to the side because we feel like it's silly or it's too big or it's unrealistic, but we all have a vision for our life. And when we go into that space of really dreaming of what's your ideal day, what's your ideal life, what is the highest and greatest version of your life 5 years from today, we all have that vision. And I do believe that that vision is divinely planted. And so I have for many, many years, since I was a child, I would use visualizing my future as a tool to make peace with my present. When I was going through struggles and when I was in dark places, especially growing up, my my visualizing my future was the kind of like this light that guided me, and it was a practice that I kept with me, well into my 20s. And then when I did have my big kind of eat, pray, love bathroom floor moment and all
right.
that happened, it was the one thing that kind of pulled me up by my bootstrap, so to speak, where I combined not only visualizing my future with, daily meditations, but also then starting to incorporate the spiritual principles and the tools to actually call in that reality, both manifesting. And, I like to say everything I do is both spiritual and strategic. So taking aligned actions, but also clearing the energy so that it could show up.
Mm, I love that. So when you, and I want to actually say something else, is that I have actually also spoken to a lot of people who say, I've never really thought about, what I really want or what my desires are. I mean, have you coached a lot of people who really haven't thought about that?
Yeah, some people haven't, and I've coached people as well that, feel like they're blocked when they try to visualize it. And I don't think that that means that it's not there for them. I think oftentimes what happens is we have something that shuts that off for us,
Right.
right? We have something that tells us, sometimes people will have one big dream that maybe they had when they were little. Maybe they visualize themselves winning their little league championship or something, and they lost, and it shattered that idea for them.
Mm,
And so I do like to investigate, when someone says that I don't have a vision or, I don't have desires, because I don't, there are different ways desires sneak up on us. And one of my kind of ninja side tricks for that is saying, do you ever go on Instagram and like compare yourself or feel envious of anyone on your feed? And almost everyone has a yes to that.
right.
And I say, okay, well, that's your desire speaking to you in a different way, right? When you go on Instagram, and I've done this exercise with some of my clients that have trouble, when you go on Instagram, I just want you to notice. It's not, I don't believe it's a, you know, good, bad, whatever, but it's information for us when we scroll through our feed and we see someone and we're like, right. And we have some sort of feeling, right? Whether it's comparison, it makes us feel less than because we think they're better than us, or maybe it's envy because they look like they have like the cutest kids ever and we really want kids, or they telling everybody that they're making, $10 million, whatever,
Right. I think that's a
Instagram is
great
so
idea.
great for this because, then you go and as you start getting triggered, you stop and you ask yourself, you say, okay, well, what about this post, this person, this situation is really triggering me, right?
Right.
And so maybe it's, well, I really, I really want, an awesome marriage and I want to have kids. And this person just looks like they have like the flippin' cutest family. And they're posting all these cute photos of their family doing whatever, And this is really just reminding that one of my desires is to have a loving, fun family life, right? And then you can start collecting data from that. I had one of my clients that when she was doing this exercise, she realized that she was mostly envious of people that just really felt like they were living their lives, and she felt kind of trapped in her life. She had to be a caretaker. She had to live in a certain place because of that. And she had so many obligations, and she would just look and see people that were, I remember she told me, she's like, I was getting so envious of this person that was, riding a boat down a river in Colorado. And I sat with it and I was like, I don't ever really care if I ride a boat down a river in Colorado. But what it evoked in me was the fact that they felt so free.
Free.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good exercise. Our desires are always there, right? It's just how much we're allowing ourselves to see them. And as a defense mechanism, when some part of us feels like, like that particular client felt blocked because she felt like, well, I have these obligations. I don't have the ability to dream, quote unquote, right? And so we can always get to it. And sometimes it does take really allowing yourself to sit with, okay, if I don't have desires, why don't I have desires? And, it's one thing if you're a Buddhist monk and you've given up any worldly desires, but most of us haven't. And I don't think that, and I think desires are really like little GPS magnets for our soul that lead us in different directions. So it's not so much ever about it doesn't have to always be about the ending destination, but it's about honoring your desires so you can enjoy the joy that's there in the journey while you're working towards them.
Right. I don't know about you, but on Instagram, you know how you can save a post and keep it personal in your personal. So I have one for like recipes. I label each one of my recipes. I have one for like travel. Like, oh my God, I gotta figure out like how I can get to this place. And then I have a vision board one where I'm like, the kitchens are like my thing. And so my next home has to have like this amazing chef kitchen. So when I see one, I save it in there. And so I have like a vision board one. And so
I love that I didn't even realize you could do that. I save stuff, but that's such a good idea. Guys, you should totally have a vision board Instagram thing.
Yes.
Because then also instead of, if you catch yourself in one of those compare or envy moments on Instagram, then you really empower yourself instead of being like feeling like funky about it. You can be like, no, I'm claiming this. I want this. I'm adding it to my vision board.
Yes, exactly. And so it just gives you little reminders. But yeah, I love to do that. Recipes, because I'm such a like fanatical cook. If I see a recipe, I'm like, oh, I got to make this. And I just save it. And so I love it. I love doing it. And I have like maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different categories on there.
I love that. I'm going to have to start doing that. I didn't realize you could even categorize them.
Yeah, you can do even if you have just like 200 just saved, you can just start categorizing them. And it's just so fun to have everything like in neat little boxes, I guess. Yeah. So yes, I think that a lot of people do have desires, though they don't think that they are worthy of them, or they don't think that they can ever attain them. And I've always said this before, like even on like past podcasts, with wanting, like, let's say someone really wants to go to Tahiti, but they were like, I can never afford to go there because maybe it's too expensive, the flight, or to stay there. And I say, well, give yourself like a year or however long. Find out how much a trip like that would cost, and then just start saving money towards that. Like just put a little bit in and just have a plan, because if you don't sort of have a plan for like planning a trip like that or something or whatever it is that somebody really wants, maybe they want an expensive purse or something, just start saving for it and then you'll have that. And maybe it'll take you less than 12 months or maybe more than 12 months, but eventually you'll get there rather than sort of saying, nope, that will never happen. And then that's the end of it, you know?
Oh yeah. So often with a good amount of things, when we find out the practicality, and I love that, you said like look up the prices, do the that's so important, because I definitely find that when it comes to things like that are money things, like where you'd invest a certain amount of money in your trip to Tahiti, we often assume it's way more expensive than it is. Like our
Right.
mind just makes it like $1 bajillion to go to Tahiti. And then when you actually go look up different flights for different times of year, you look up different versions of like different hotel options you could stay at, you can come back with a number that's like, I don't know, $2,000 or something, right?
Right. Right.
And then now you're like, okay, $2,000. $2,000 feels a lot better than like a billion vague dollars, right?
Mhm.
And from that aspect, you're also like, okay, now I can manifest. I have multiple things that I can call in. I can call in perhaps some sort of, discount on one of these hotels. Maybe I put travel alerts on for Groupon for Tahiti or one of those sites,
Nice.
right? Maybe I
Right.
put airline ticket alerts on for Tahiti. And then also I just hold the vision every day. Maybe you put a beautiful picture of Tahiti, next to your computer, right? Or on your desk, right? And you open up the space for possibilities for, how that could happen, in magical ways. And there have been so many times, I can't even tell you, it's kind of a joke with my friends right now, because I have manifested trips like out of the blue, right?
Hmm.
Where I'll be, I remember this one time, it was like 2 years ago. I was really craving, I'd gone on a lot of work traveling, but I was really craving like going to like Mexico or an island, something like that. And again, I get a call from a friend out of the blue. And she was like, hey, I'm doing this trip to Punta Mita. Everything's included. We really want you to lead a couple meditations. If you can lead a couple meditations, we'll take care of everything. Right? And
Amazing.
I was like, okay, done. And so I really do encourage, like, I encourage doing both the magical and the practical, right? Like,
Right.
do the practical, figure it out, come up with a game plan, hold that space, but then also create the openness for magic, for it to happen, or for you to receive that $2,000 in a magical way you didn't expect, so that you can do it, or for you to get, maybe one of your relatives says, oh my God, I have all these extra frequent flyer miles. Is there any trips that you need to use these for? Because I'm never going to use them. Right? Like there are
Oh,
so many magical ways things can happen. And often we box ourselves into thinking that we need to know the whole how. Right?
right.
And we don't. We don't. We can take aligned action, and we can hold the space, and we can do obviously that preparation, which is great. But then it's also, what about for things that aren't so black and white, right? Like calling in a life partner, or having a baby, or getting, some sort of amazing opportunity in your business, right?
Right.
There are so many big things that we can work on that we don't, we know the logical steps up to a certain point. And then we also have to hold space for a lot of that magic. And so much of that really does come from looking at the fears and looking at the different beliefs that you have created that said that wasn't likely, or that wasn't possible, or that couldn't happen, and really, really clearing them out.
How does one clear that out?
So, what I like to do is, when I work with people, we go through their visioning, and then we break that down into goals, more specific things. Um, and we look at, so let's say you had a couple of the women I'm working with right now are calling in their husbands. So if that's the thing. So you're like, okay, I would love to call in an amazing husband. And then you look at and you say, okay, when I really say that, when I say like, I'm going to meet my amazing life partner this year, what negative beliefs, what negative self-talk, what fears pop up as soon as I fully allow myself to want that desire, right? And so maybe it's like, well, there are no good guys in LA, or guys are intimidated by my success, or, it's difficult to find men because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever. Or maybe they won't love me enough, or whatever it is. We all have our things. So you
Right.
just get honest about your things. And that's the most important thing, is that you're just honest with yourself about whatever it is. And you write those all down. And then what I like to have people do is go through and really ask themselves, what evidence have I collected to support this belief? What, memories do I have that support this belief? What, examples have I gathered in life that support this belief? Maybe you're like, well, 3 of my best friends are single as well. Maybe it's like, well, that one guy I dated was X, Y, and Z, right? And
Right.
we just get clear on not only what are the beliefs, but where did they come from? And then we ask ourselves, well, what do I really want to believe? And what evidence do I have to support what I want to believe? Right? And we find evidence for that as well. So you're like, well, I want to believe that, I can find an amazing guy and we can get married within a year or whatever it is. And you're like, well, actually, I know so and so who did that, and that happened for her, and that happened for this person. And why not? If both people really know what they want, and it's clear that they want to be together, then why wouldn't they? You kind of come up with your own evidence for that. And so, what I like to do, whether it's in the with my one-on-one or my group coaching, is then at that point, when we have this like big juicy list, we go through and then we do some energy work. That's when we do the EFT, or we'll do AIT, and we'll just really process and clear this stuff. So we'll start, if you're going to start a round of EFT or tapping, you'll start from that place of, even though I feel like I'm never going to meet my man or whatnot, I still love and accept myself. You start from that negative belief. And then as you start going around doing tapping and the different pressure points, you start sharing all of your evidence. You start telling all of the reasons why that you believe that thing. And then when you hit kind of the shift point, you welcome in, but this is what I want to believe. Right. And then we go through the evidence and we program in the evidence of what we want to believe. And I really recommend, obviously when I work with people one-on-one, we go through a lot of this process together and do that. But for people at home and what I kind of do myself, I recommend I feel like this is all just a really strong daily practice. If you're really serious about stepping into a new level of your life, having that daily practice of, holding that vision and getting clear on that, what that next level is for you. And then going through and really doing this deprogramming work around some of the fears and the blocks you have around it.
Mm. And is that sort of is this a technique you use to meet the person that you're with now?
Yeah. So I did before, there were so many things I think that really helped with that. And I think that one of the biggest factors that people underestimate was, before I met him, I had gotten out of a relationship. And what happened after that relationship was that something shifted in me. And for the first time in my life, I truly, truly consciously allowed the desire of wanting to get married and wanting to have a partner. And this happens actually with a lot of the women that I work with, where as women, especially, we assume we kind of feel like, oh, we've always been looking for our husbands, right? And I assume that as well. Like, of course, like if any of these guys turned out to be my husband, that would have been great, and it just wasn't meant to be. But the truth was, before I met my partner, I actually claimed that desire in a way that I had never done before, right? I allowed myself, I had always been really great at allowing my more professional desires, right? And with that desire, that was kind of like a desire I just kind of like let be around. And so I got really serious and I claimed it. And I said, this is something that I really want. I'm truly ready to start life with someone. And I'm not, and I'm unwilling to spend any more time down roads that don't lead that way. Right. And so I got really clear on that. And I got really clear on also what the characteristics I wanted. So when we do that visioning and getting really clear on our goal or our desire, I get really clear on what does that relationship feel like? How does that man show up for me? What are the characteristics, not only of him, but of our relationship together? And I held nothing back. I held nothing back, and I allowed myself to want things that I thought were completely, more ridiculous, I guess, or I don't know if ridiculous is the word, but I just allowed myself to want everything I truly wanted without any judgment about wanting it. And so that was the first time. And I wrote that list. I wrote a list of all of the things. And I pretty much got to the place with myself where I was like, this or nothing, right? Like this
nice.
or nothing.
Yeah.
And so from that, I looked at what are the parts of me that says I can't have this, right? What are the parts of me that says that something on this list is impractical or asking too much, right? And I did a lot, a lot of clearing work around beliefs that like I couldn't, meet someone until I felt like I was at the height of my career, right? Which will endlessly be growing, I had beliefs around lovability from, things that had happened growing up that I had to clear to feel like I was worthy. All different kinds of things I really had to. But the biggest part, I think, in that journey too, was also me really just honoring what I truly desired. I honestly think that was the biggest part too, and then not accepting less. So I always tell my ladies that are doing that work, it's like once you get clear on your desires, once you get really clear and allow yourself to want what you genuinely want, because again, if we remember that our desires are divinely designed, it's not an accident. If you and your 5 best friends write out your lists of what you want in your divine partnership relationship, they're going to have different lists. There are going to be some things that are maybe similar, but maybe one of your friends wants to, be traveling all the time and not have kids or live in a certain place. We're all going to have different dynamics, right? And we can trust that our unique desires around everything, but also around partnership, is there for a reason, right? And that's because that's what's truly going to support our soul to be in its most expansive place. And so when we don't compromise on that, I think it sends a really powerful signal to the universe that says, I'm ready for this. And I'm not going to, waste any time on someone that doesn't show up in this way, because I actually know that this is out there. And and so once I got clear with that, it was not even a month before I met him. And and I didn't know it was him right away. I was putting everyone that I dated at that time kind of through the tests and asking the questions. I had turned my list of what I wanted into questions. So I would ask guys, what's your relationship to God, right? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would ask questions that sometimes people would be like, the men actually never bothered the men. It would make my girlfriends uncomfortable. But guys never minded. They just appreciated it. And then you got to the heart of it, of like, is this person going to be, someone that could be a match? And yeah. But yeah, so that was a bit of that process. And then also, which we didn't even get into, but also part of my divine design kind of formula of sorts that I do, whether it's like the group coaching, the clients, or for myself or whatever, is embodiment and really looking at, okay, and this was something I definitely did around partnership too, is I asked myself, okay, for me, the clothing part wasn't a thing. Like I already dressed kind of like how I wanted to dress. I felt expressed in that way. But for a couple of my girlfriends, I remember this was a big shift, was the difference between dressing like a girlfriend and dressing like a wife. And
Interesting.
that was for me, that wasn't really a big thing, but for some, they started noticing, that they were a little bit more into the LA club scene and that kind of stuff in me. And they realized, okay, am I really dressing in a way that's telling a guy that like I'm ready for a serious relationship, right?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And but also I think, when you think of it's so easy for us to think of our dream partner, right? But then asking yourself, okay, what version of me is the version of me that's gonna meet them there, right?
Right.
And how does that version of me show up? For me, it was a lot more around the house stuff. So it was, okay, I am, which I don't know if people would assume this about me, but I am not like a super tidy person. I'm a very like creative hurricane. And so while I like things nice and neat, I do have a hurricane effect on everything. And so I really worked on my tidiness and also, making sure that if I did want to like have someone over, I would be proud of, the state of my house.
Right. Right.
But it was just still those things. And it's just the energy of thinking, they say, you know, do you have, a space that would be welcoming to your partner, right? Or do you have a space? It's kind of like the age old joke around like bachelor pads, right? But it's like if a guy has like a bachelor pad, you kind of walk in and you're like, oh, okay, like doesn't really look like you're trying to fit someone in here. But yeah, so just thinking about one of the fun things I like to do, and perhaps this is a better example around work and things like that, is I like to think of, what is that next level you, whatever, with that has accomplished the goals, whether it's the partner or the work or whatever it may be, and how do they like to dress themselves every day? What clothes do they feel most like themselves in? How do they do their hair and their makeup? How do they, how do they rearrange their desk? What's their work environment look like? What
Right.
kind of sheets are on their bed? And oftentimes those little visual daily cues can also bring us up into a new reality.
Oh, interesting. And so, did you meet your current partner organically, or were you on dating sites?
Oh yeah, no, I met him on a dating site. Um, and it was so funny because it drives me crazy. There's so many women right now that are so against dating sites. And, I never thought I'd meet my partner on one, but I always thought it was just such a great energetic tool. Every other person other than my partner, every other boyfriend I've ever had, I met organically. Um, and so I always just thought like I would use dating apps as an energetic tool to like kind of signal to the universe that I was like open for business. And it always worked where I would like go on a couple of dates with the dating app and then I'd meet someone organically. And so on some level, I feel like I didn't expect it to come from there, which probably in hindsight made it better for me because I wasn't putting extra pressure on anything.
Right.
And I found, yeah, so it worked for me. I met him on the League. And I also believe it's kind of like when we're manifesting, just like we were talking about Tahiti, we really don't want to limit the ways in which something can come to us,
Sure.
right? Because when you're saying, like, if you're like, okay, I want to go to, this is so funny. It's like, that example of like the guy that like is stranded in the ocean and believes that God's going to come save him. Have you heard that story?
Yes.
Right? Where like, like the Coast Guard comes and a helicopter comes and like all these different people come to try to save him. He's like, no, God's going to save me. And then he gets to heaven and God's like, I tried to save you. I sent the Coast Guard. I sent this guy. I sent,
Right.
And so I always feel like manifesting is kind of like that too. It's like, people would be like, oh, like I really want to go to Tahiti, but I don't want it to be like a free trip. Or, or I like really want to go to Tahiti, but I don't want my Uncle Mike to pay for my flight and miles or whatever,
Right.
And it's like, can you just allow yourself to receive it? Right. And so I believe that whether it's like your mom setting you up with someone, you meeting someone at like, a church group or a religious group or, at a coffee shop or meeting someone on a dating app or meeting someone through, a Facebook group or something like that. Don't close any of the avenues because it's usually the ones you least suspect that end up delivering.
Yeah, I heard this quote once. I'll never forget it. Because when something unexpected comes to me, sometimes I have a little bit of a problem receiving because I'm such a giver. And so that's definitely something I'm working on. But one of the things that someone told me once was when the universe gives you something, take it. Because when you're always pushing stuff away or someone's trying to help you or someone's trying to give you something or lend you something or something sort of comes out of the blue and you're like, oh my God, should I take this? Like, and so I always have to remind myself, like, if the universe sends you something, it sends you a gift, you take it. Because, right? Because then it sort of allows the universe like, oh, okay, she is receiving. This is good. We'll just send her more stuff kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think we all have a set point for what we will allow ourselves to receive. And I think that one of the best work that we can do is really allowing ourselves to receive more and more, to increase our capacity for what we can hold, right? And so I often joke, like I said, some of my girlfriends will be like, oh, you manifest just like the craziest things. And I will say that it's not because I'm, I like to say I'm very magical, but it's not that I'm more magical than anybody else. It's simply just because I have the capacity to believe that that's possible for me, right? So like for me, if we get off this call and there's an email in my inbox that says, hey, barring flights are open and all that stuff, we have this, we'd love you to come to Tahiti, right?
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't make me flinch much, I'd giggle a little bit and I'd be like, let's go to Tahiti, right? And but there are some people where if they got off this call and they looked at their inbox and there was an invitation to go to Tahiti for free, they'd be like, oh, this is a scam. It must be a setup. Like, couldn't possibly be this. I don't know, right? And it's just a bandwidth issue, right? And so
true.
And that's why it's great advice. It's like the more that you allow yourself to receive by you fully. And I give some of my clients this practice that I share with all of you guys. I think this is a great way to have some fun manifesting stuff by simply just receiving the things that you're already manifesting. So if something like fun happens to you, right? Let's say you're at a small thing. You're at the coffee shop and, the barista is like, this one's on me. I see you every morning. This one's on me. Right. And a completely like kind of possible thing that could happen for some of us. Right. And so if you fully in that moment, like really receive it, be like, I manifested a free coffee this morning. Right. Like I can manifest things that normally should cost money for free. Right.
Like celebrate it.
Let's celebrate it. Like, let's celebrate it. Let's sit with it. And even something that in your life, we all have things in our life right now that we've called in, that we've manifested, right? So maybe that's an amazing relationship with one of your close friends, right? You called that in. You called that person in, right? You called that kind of relationship, that kind of support you have in, right? So you can sit with that and say, and really receive it, really receive it. That's possible. And if I was able to call that relationship in, of course I can call other amazing relationships in, right?
Right.
And just sitting with it in meditation and allowing ourselves to receive it. I mean, I've done this with you can literally do it with anything, right? We talk about the Tahiti, the handbag. You could do it with like a desk. Like I'm just looking at my desk right now. I love my desk. I got it years ago, but I just was obsessed with it when I got it. And even something as silly as like a desk, right? You can really receive the fact that at one point this desk was a desire.
That's
And
true.
now it's here.
Yeah.
And the more that we increase the capacity for that, and the more that we open ourselves up to the fact that things can happen to us or come to us in really magical ways, and even think about some of the more magical things that have happened, right? Then the more that we allow ourselves to hold the space so that we can receive more, and we kind of give that cue to the universe or God or our higher power that we're available for miracles and magical occurrences.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was one day I remember when I used to work at the stock exchange as the nurse practitioner for the guys on the trading floor. And so I used to go down there a lot. There was a Starbucks in there. And I remember one day, I don't know what was happening in my life, but I was just like kind of bummed or just like low energy. So I went down to get Starbucks, and the barista, this guy, I placed my order and I was like, you know what? Can you just add a little extra love in there? I don't even know what that means exactly, like for him to do.
I
But I
love
was
it.
like, and so he like does this thing with his hands and like puts something from the air like in there. And then the woman she must have overheard me. She was the other barista. She goes in and gets me like this beautiful, it was like a cookie or muffin. And she's like, here you go. And she just gifted it to me, I guess, from, and it was, what a beautiful gesture from both of them. When all I had to say was, add a little extra love in there for me, please. And then magically, and I didn't say, I didn't ask for the sweets. But the woman came out, she gave it to me. And then whatever he sort of I feel like he intentionally added love while he was making it.
Absolutely. And it's true. It's just from you also. That's a great point, right? It's from you in that moment being open and vulnerable enough to ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think it's, whether it's actually asking for it like you did, which is a really powerful. I've so many stories. One of like a passport office. I didn't realize that you needed like 6 months leeway on your passport to travel to certain countries. And so I was about to board my flight for Barcelona and I got rejected. And I had to go back, like literally from LAX, drive home, go to a passport office. And I missed my flight, obviously. And I literally had to ask the passport office for a miracle. I was like, I need to get on a flight out today. I was speaking in Barcelona that week. So I was like, I need to get on a flight out today. I need like you to renew my passport like within an hour.
All right.
And she was like, okay, let me talk to my supervisor. Let me see. And she was like, okay, we're going to give you your miracle today. And I was like, all right, amazing. And then I went back to the airline and I explained everything that happened. And I was like, listen, I need a miracle. I can't buy another ticket. Like, I need a miracle. I need you to put me on another flight. And this woman did.
Oh, wow.
I was persistent. I was persistent. I had to wait, for a couple hours and,
Right.
but I stayed strong and I stayed believing in the miracle. I was like, I know that this can happen. I'm not going to have to pay another like $3,000, and, and it happened. And those were great examples of like times when you really, I always say like, you can enroll people in being your miracle worker and people love to do that. Right.
Right.
For instance, even in the Tahiti example, right? If you happen to know that you have some relatives or people in your life that have a lot of, frequent flyer miles, you could call them up and say, listen, I really need a miracle and I'm just putting this out there, no pressure. But I'm just super stressed right now, and I'm just fantasizing about this trip to Tahiti. And if there's any way at some point you think giving me some of your miles might be able to help me get a flight there, like that would be amazing, right?
Right.
And I think that's a really powerful gesture. And it's also just a really powerful gesture for so many of us to just to ourselves admit that we want the miracle, right? Like, hey, I really want this. I have no idea how it's going to happen. But, God, angels, higher powers, universe, source, I'm open. I'm open for it to happen in ways I can't imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I love that so much because just being open, I think just allows things to flow in so much more easily.
Absolutely. Because then you're not blocking any optional ways it can flow.
Right. Right. Exactly. Oh, this is so good. Okay. So are there any other, so once you have this desire and you're open for it, you're sort of putting the intention out there. Was there any other sort of steps, any sort of things to do?
Yeah. So I think it's then really aligning yourself, aligning your thoughts and aligning your actions to these desires, right? So when we think about these things that we want, it's really being conscious of, okay, are my thoughts supporting that this could happen, or are my thoughts negating that this could happen? And if it's something, let's say like the Tahiti thing, right? Where, there are some things like that you might be able to set it and forget it, right? You might be able to say like, hey, I'm going to put that picture of Tahiti up. I'm open for it. I'm going to look at how much it costs. And then I'm just going to kind of forget it and go about my life. That's totally fine. With some other things like that may be attached to your career or even your personal life, they might kind of be a little bit more insidious. And so you might find yourself like at the end of the day, or if you have a tough conversation with your boss or something like that, being like, oh, that's never going to happen. Right. And so it's definitely aligning your thoughts, because realizing that what your thoughts really create your reality. And so as we are thinking, we have the power to kind of create or destruct anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so being really conscious of where your thoughts are around that, I think that is a big thing. One of the exercises I like to do is really do a thought log for a week. And be logging, a minute in the morning, a minute at night, and just log stream of consciousness, all the thoughts that are going through your head, and really start seeing where are my thoughts leading me, right? How are my thoughts making me feel? Are my thoughts supporting this vision that I have for my life, or are my thoughts negating it in any way? And then going in and reprogramming some of those thoughts, which can be as simple. When you do this exercise, it's really terrifying and fascinating how so many of your thoughts are really the same thoughts in different forms. And so when you really look at all the thoughts that you think, you probably only think, 7 to 10 thoughts and many different iterations of those thoughts, right?
Right.
And so when you look at those, and some of them will be good and some of them will be, less great. And, when I did this, one of the ones that really stuck out to me is I had a lot of thoughts about being tired and different versions of being tired or exhausted or not having enough sleep. And so I looked at that and I was like, okay, well, obviously the practical thing we can do for that is get 8 hours of sleep. So that you actually got the right amount of sleep. But then also really looking at, okay, well, it's more than just the practical, because I could get 8 hours of sleep and still be thinking those thoughts, because my thoughts are running a program that says I'm tired. And then going back and saying, okay, well, what do I want to believe? Once again, I have plenty of energy to get everything I want to get done today, right? And so then when those thoughts come up saying, I'm tired, I know, actually, no, I have plenty of energy to get everything I want to get done. And so
Right.
that's a big part of the process. I think the other big part of the process is also being open to every day really tuning into that divine guidance. I like to say when you go through that kind of the daily process, I would say, is just what we talked about, right? when I go through my Design Your Life group program, we have like 12 different kind of little points and modules that we work through. But those two are really the biggest ones to incorporate on the daily is, getting that vision and clearing the fears every day. And then, of course, doing the work to really incorporate those subconscious cues into your life, doing the strategic where you get clear, like you were saying, find out how much Tahiti is, find out, okay, well, how would you write a book proposal, doing that, join a dating app or tell your friends to set you up with someone, like do the practical stuff that, is obvious. And then also holding that space for the magical every day, which comes in the form of really connecting to your higher power, to your guide, to the universe, whatever your divine connection is, and asking for guidance every day, asking, okay, I've surrendered these desires of my heart up. What would you have me do today? What are the things I can do today to move me in the right direction towards them? And listening to that guidance every day, making that an important part of your to-do list, I would say, is the final thing that I'll leave everyone with.
Amazing. I love this conversation so much. How can people find you?
You can find me all the places. Instagram is at Cassandra Bodzak. YouTube is Cassandra Bodzak TV. I have tons of free guided meditations on there and tapping if you want to try out some of the things. I have a meditation that you can do to help you visualize your future self on there. I also have a free quantum leap workshop, which kind of walks through some of this as well. If anyone wants to check that out and has a meditation for getting connected to that future you as well, because I know that that's something that's often more helpful for people to be guided through the first few times. But yeah, I'm Cassandra Bodzak everywhere.
Great. Oh, it's been such a great, first of all, it's been so great to have you back on the podcast. It's been a few years. And I think this conversation is so relevant now because I think a lot of people are sort of trying to figure out like what's next. We both know a lot of people that are moving. And so including possibly myself again next year. I don't know yet, but that's definitely been on my mind. Yeah. So thank you so much. I think this will help a lot of people sort of start to really dream of what their desires really are and how to either practically put things together, like planning a trip, setting aside, like opening up a vacation account or something, and figuring out how much you need exactly and sort of saving that, even if it's 2 years away, it's still going to happen in your lifetime if that's what you really want, if Tahiti's in the plans.
Right. I can't wait to hear if you're listening to this and Tahiti is your dream. You got to tag me and Margaret so we know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
This is a divine message for you.
Yeah. And the dating apps thing. I mean, I think that, due to COVID, and I think it's maybe not as bad as it was like March, April, May, to meet people, and everything's been virtual this, virtual that, Zoom calls and whatnot. But I think a lot of my girlfriends are just like, oh, I don't want to do another dating app. But I can see how if you're sort of doing it as a way, and I love the way how you put that, like that you're like in business, like, I'm here, I'm on this app and I'm sort of like ready, rather than going in like, oh, I hate this shit, like going through swiping, like just really kind of hating it. I think you're energetically, I don't think that's good.
No, you need to be having fun with it because it's also saying, everything is energy, right? So it's like the same thing if you were, applying for new jobs and you want like a better job, but you're kind of, miserable in the application process. So it's like you're not going to attract the job you want with that kind of energy. But I think when you get really clear with jobs, with men, you get really clear on what you want, it makes that process actually way more fun and less taxing because you're not going to swipe right on every guy, that's cute.
Right.
You're going to have higher standards. And also I encourage, especially for spiritual women that are tapped into their intuition when they're doing that, use your intuition. I mean, so fun.
Totally.
Use your intuition while you're
Yeah.
swiping, and tap into him. And does he meet up with what I truly want? And then don't swipe right if he has something that, if there's something that's a red flag already in his bio. And then you ultimately, end up speaking to less people, but speaking to more qualified people, which feels
Totally.
better again.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely think it's a good open for business sign. And just because you're on it doesn't necessarily mean you'll meet someone on it. You could always meet someone at the coffee shop, but at least you're saying to the world, you wouldn't say to the world, hey, I want to switch jobs and I want to get to this other job, but I'm just going to hope that I meet someone at Starbucks that offers me another job.
Right.
Like, no sane person would do that, right?
Right.
They would be like, no, I've got to apply for other jobs.
Right.
Right? I got to send out resumes, right? Maybe you could totally, it doesn't mean you can't meet someone at Starbucks and ends up offering you a job. That definitely happens, right? But you wouldn't just like let that be the only opportunity. Same thing with dating. It's like, yeah, you could totally meet someone out in the wild. But especially with everything that's going on right now. And, I'll just leave with this because this was a really big shift for me when I decided to go on the apps. I had a guy friend of mine who was a very successful owner of a company and great guy, like close guy friend of mine, someone that I, would have any, of my women date. And he got on Tinder and he met his now wife on Tinder. This was a few years ago. And he was always egging me to get on the apps, And when I was finally single again and it made sense, he was like, you got to do it. And I was explaining to him, my concerns about it. And what he told me really just changed me forever. He was like, think about the kind of guy you want. He was like, do you want the kind of guy that's like hanging out at bars or going to events to meet people, or to try to like meet someone to date? Or do you want a guy like me and a lot of my friends where we're running companies, we're busy, I want to like be able to talk with someone a little bit, see if it's a good match, and then decide if I'm going to invest in dinner with someone and that time. And that actually seems like a way more logical thing than me just kind of hanging out at a bar in Soho and seeing if, there's someone I'm going to approach and not knowing anything about this woman or what she's about or what she cares about, And when I thought of it like that, and the more I started seeing the quality of men, at least from my social circles, that were utilizing that as a way to date, it really shifted me because it was true. And the same thing. I mean, my fiance is a neurosurgeon. There's no way he would like meet someone like just randomly hanging out at bars all the time. He just doesn't have time to do that.
Right.
And that was the kind of guy I knew I wanted, a guy that, had a lot going on and wasn't necessarily like hanging out in places to meet women. So,
Right. Yeah. You're too busy to be doing that, running a company, having a really busy, job, especially for what he does. Yeah. He's not going to be out and about like that. So your friend was encouraging you to do the dating apps for that very reason.
Yeah.
Right?
He convinced me and he was right.
Good.
I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you so much again. It's been such a pleasure to have you back on, and I'll probably have you back on just sometime in the future. Talk about something else that's going to be amazing for us.
It was a pleasure to be on. I love chatting with you.
Same
I look forward
here.
to see what this next evolution brings you if you should choose to move.
Yes. And I'd love to also know where you end up as well, if you end up somewhere else.
I will.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Have a good ride.
You too.
All right.
I hope that got your mind kind of stirring a little bit as to what you want in your life in the next few years, and actually also in the immediate year too, you can also plan for. So to learn more about Cassandra, you can head on over to margaretromero.com/episode 158. And also know that look out for, I think it's going to be the last episode the last week of December, I am going to be posting this one technique that I've used for several years. So you're going to want a special book for this, because I have one book that has, for every year that I do this, I have a special book. And so I don't put anything else in this one journal at all. And I think it's a great way to kind of recap. And then you can always, it's so good because you can look back at all the years past that you've done this, I don't know, it's kind of like a ritual. I guess I call it a ritual, but it's just something I do every year. And, but I do it in a way that I light candles and I have on music in the background. I'm alone when I do this. It's quiet. And I think you're going to love it. I think you're really going to love it. So, I know a lot of you may not, or everyone that's listening to this may not want to remember 2020, but I think it's a, pivotal year. So many of us have gone through so many different things this year. And I think it's just, I know you may not want to remember it, but for me, there have been a lot of good changes as well, and some good things that have come out of this time. So, and I'll definitely share those with you as well. So, all right, I will speak to you all next week on a totally different topic, but wherever you are in the world, thank you so much for listening. If you've been loving these episodes, I would love if you can leave a review in iTunes. That would be amazing. Thank you so much for listening. Much love to you all. Bye for now.